we went spectacularly bust. You do not put all your eggs in one basket, because I did. 85 to 90% of our turnover was with them. They decided that enough was enough and they weren't putting any more in, and they killed it off. There were the staff which you could let go, cars taken off for drive by the leasing companies, and then hanging on to the family home, which was the hardest thing. But they came after me, 15 years later for it. Personal guarantees never get personal guarantees, because they're there forever, but I borrowed money off my father-in-law and started again.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Rich in Conversation. Today, I'm joined by someone I know very, very well, although I feel like, Don, there's a lot I don't know about you from the past. So Don and my dad are pretty much best friends, have gotten up to all sorts of trouble all over the place, only some of which I know. So it's my joy to introduce him to you guys. He's going to share with you some of his business journey, life journey, whatever it is that comes up as we're talking through. So if in the chat you have any questions, please put them in there. These sessions are better when you guys have some questions to ask as well. So Don, welcome to Rich in Conversation. Just tell us a little bit about who you are, kind of a bit of your history, what you do, and everything like that, please.
Thanks, Lewis. Yep. Thanks for the invitation. Always nice to sort of talk to the younger generation. Yes, we're not going to go anywhere where I've been with your father. Thank you very much. You should leave that firmly in the past where it should remain. But our paths did cross at a very early age when we both attended Trent Park College, as it was in those days, a teacher education establishment, and we both had high hopes of teaching the future generations through becoming teachers of design technology. Your dad, as you know well, carried on and taught to his entire career. I managed to last 3 months before handing my notice in, serving a term's notice, and left after 6 months.
Wow.
And it was just I thoroughly enjoyed the 3 years of education. I enjoyed every minute of it. But I suddenly realized that I could not sort of stake my future on the behavior of 30 odd horrible kids. And I realized also that it was very much a dead man's shoes game. And it didn't matter how good you were, you didn't earn any more money. You only earned more money by getting little point things, and it's awful. It was just, and I just felt I wanted to be in control of my destiny. And if I wanted to work hard, I wanted to reap the rewards. And that was why after a relatively short period of time, I started looking through the Times Ed supplement initially to try and find, that's where you find teaching jobs, but initially to try and find a better school or a better area and maybe nicer kids. But in actual fact, I kept seeing the same little advert at the end of the job section, which said, graduates wanting careers in sales and management, phone this number. And after one particularly bad Friday, I just picked up the phone, had an interview, and joined a company 3 months later.
Wow.
And as a salesman. And then I rapidly went on quite some intensive sales training courses, only to find that the psychology of selling was actually identical to educational psychology, which I spent 3 years studying. And it made me realize, of course, that actually all teachers are doing is selling knowledge to children.
Yeah.
And they just dress it all up an entirely different way. So I actually started off in a fantastic place as a salesman, because I actually knew it all. I knew all the psychology. I want somebody that actually just sort of twisted it a little bit to look upon it as selling a product to a customer instead of knowledge to kids. It was a pretty easy transition. And I had some considerable success with that. Various changes. The company, I was top salesman of the year on my second year. The company asked me to go to the Middle East. I jumped at that opportunity, mistakenly as it happens, because I found myself living in Saudi Arabia for a year at the ripe old age of 25, and that's not the place. That's not the place to be when you're 25 years of age in the late 70s. Early 80s, 79, I think it was. So, but I did a year there, and then I spent the next 3 years working in the Gulf, the Arabian Gulf. Amazing experience, fantastic. And eventually decided to bite the bullet and start my own business. And that business then was fitting out offices. That was in 1984.
Yeah.
And
Going back a step there, so a lot of people would maybe take a sales job because they're sick of something they're doing. It sounds like you did well at sales. What was it that made you willing to travel abroad? Because not everybody has that. So I know you said it wasn't necessarily the best place to be at the age of 25 or around that age, but why were you willing to do that? Why were you willing to travel, leave the UK, and have that
money.
type of experience? That was the primary
Money.
driver. Yeah.
No, it was the only driver.
Yeah.
I mean, I promise you that Riyadh in 1979, there's only one thing that would get anyone there. But the fact is, it was money. I mean, it was sort of trebling my salary and no income tax.
Yeah. Yeah.
And after 12 months in Riyadh, I was able to come back and put the deposit down and buy my first property.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, you imagine that you go and you go and work somewhere horrible for a year, but you come back and you can get your foot in the property ladder. I mean, admittedly, property was considerably cheaper then. I mean, it was my the first flat I bought was 17,500 quid. So
Yeah. I'd like to go back to those times. That'd be great. Yeah.
yeah.
So what do you think made money such a driver for you? Because that's obviously part of the reason why you wanted to leave the teaching profession,
Mhm.
wanting to be the master of your own destiny, and obviously money helps with that. But had money always been a primary driver? Because going into teaching, I'd be surprised if you thought about money being the primary driver at that point. So did something happen? Did something change that then made money the primary driver?
To be honest with you, it wasn't. Money wasn't the primary driver. Obviously, there was always a means to an end. But for me initially, I mean, I'd had jobs since I was 13. I'd worked in weekends in department stores, cafes on the beach in South Wales, every school holidays. I mean, I never didn't have a part-time job, from newspapers at 13 and there on after. I'd always been happy to work. I'd always been happy to, but I did, I did see very quickly that that the effort should equal reward. And that was the one thing I found that teaching just absolutely didn't offer, because you could put all the effort you liked in there, you can work as hard as you like, you could be as good as you like, but if the guy above you, was hell bent on staying in that job, then you couldn't move. And there've been times, and there were in the 70s, times when it's actually quite hard to move teaching jobs. There weren't that many of all sorts of educational cuts going on and everything else. So it was advancement prospects were incredibly small.
Yeah.
So that was the thing. It was the I want to control. If I'm going to work hard, I want to be in a business that is going to reward that hard work.
Yeah. I think that's probably something that a lot of our members would resonate with, because we do want to be in control of our own future. And if you are trapped in a job where your paycheck is designed by somebody else or decided by somebody else, or the promotion is decided by somebody else, you're never truly in control in the same way, which is why we're all trading. Mark says, I'm looking at getting out of teaching at the moment, and what you're saying resonates with me completely. Well, funny enough, Don, not only do we have Mark as a teacher, but Josh Jones, who's our head of mentoring, is also Welsh and was also a teacher before he became a trader. Right. So there's lots of little link ups there. Okay, so we've got to the part of our story where we're in our mid-20s, we've moved abroad, we're earning 3 times as much as we would have earned, and now we're setting up is it your first business, which was the office fit outs? How did you get into that? Because you've gone from teaching to sales to office fit outs now.
Well, the thing is, no, that was quite logical. I mean, the sales side, I was selling initially for the one company, industrial storage equipment, racking, shelving, storage systems. Part of my success was my ability to design space and to see space. Now that came from my training being a teacher of design technology, where I was able to draw. Engineering drawing was part of my school education, but an important part of my teacher education as well. So I had that skill, so I could draw people little sketches and schemes, and go back, and I wouldn't just go back with a quote. I go back with a little drawing for it, and that helped me sell whilst I was with that company, because I was with that company all the way through, in the UK and in the Middle East. They launched a range of office partitioning and storage systems, and I headed that up, the launch of all those products in the Middle East. And I particularly liked that side of it. So when I started up, I thought, well, yeah, I had all these products. So I started my own business selling their products, creating office spaces and office storage systems. And then went into the whole gamut of fitting out offices, and that evolved in the late 80s that we are now, in career wise, the fitness boom that came over from the States, where everybody suddenly wanted corporate fitness centers in their offices, and so we started having to buy gym equipment, understanding all the how do you design a gym, and then and then my best salespeople were actually our gym equipment suppliers, who said, "Oh wow, we found somebody who knows how to design and build gyms." I said, "Well, not really. You know more than most." And they started introducing us to the growing boom in health club owners and operators. So we started fitting out health clubs, and then in 1991. We went spectacularly bust. Um, when our biggest customer, this is the all the eggs in one basket lesson that that most young businessmen end up learning. You do not put all your eggs in one basket, because I did, and there was a company called Mercury Communications we were doing, I don't know, 85 to 90% of our turnover was with them, and the investors, which were enormous companies, British Gas, Cable and Wireless, they decided that this wasn't making the money. And British Gas, third investor. So you think you've got support and security, and they decided that this project that should run for 5 6 years wasn't making any money, and they were gonna kill it off and cut it, and and that was and I was doing millions with them, and it was
Mhm.
just like, well, finish the job you're doing. Thanks very much, but no more business.
So how
Um,
did you
so
handle that? And what was the impact of that? I'm assuming you had team members you probably had to let go. What did that
yeah.
mean for you personally? How did you kind of handle that, recover from that, and push through that? Because that would add
That
all
was
the spill
but,
over.
nightmare. That was, I mean, look, I mean, there were the staff which you could let go. It was cars taken off for drive by the leasing companies. I mean, yeah, and then hanging on to the family home, which was the hardest thing, because there, guarantees to the banks and God knows what else, and they came after that. I mean, fortunately, in 91, the property market was in a mess, so the amount of equity in the house wasn't that much. So the bank didn't, it wasn't worth their effort coming after it with with all the costs and everything else. So they actually left that. But they came after me, 15 years later for it. But yeah, that's another thing. Personal guarantees, never get personal guarantees, because they're there forever, and they just came back, as if 10, 15 years, said, "Oh, we done a drive-by survey of your house, we want our money."
Wow.
Okay, you can do deals with them. Okay, I promise you. They wanted 75 grand, and I gave them 25. But it was still a case of those things that are around your neck forever. Um, but it was look, the fact was, it was protecting the family. But I borrowed money off my father-in-law and started again.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, by that time it was all I knew. I certainly didn't want to go and work for somebody.
Yeah.
I remember once somebody saying to me, a job, job, working for somebody else stands for just over broke.
Yeah.
Um, and it was a thing that stuck with me, and I so again dusted myself down and started again.
So what
So
was it a case of I've got confidence in myself to go and try again, or was it just a case of necessity? I just cannot bring myself to work for somebody else. I have to go and do my own thing again.
yeah. Well, both, Lewis, because the fact is that we didn't go bust because it was a bad business model. We went bust because I had made the mistake of putting all my eggs in one basket, and yet a company supported by some three of the biggest companies in the UK at the time, that you just assume it's going to go on forever.
Yeah.
And you just don't realize how ruthless these big companies can be. Whatever millions they put into this to try and make it a viable business, they decided that enough was enough and they weren't putting any more in, and they killed it off.
Yeah.
So if you like, I didn't lose a business through making any business mistakes. I lost it through actions of others, So I wasn't in the slightest bit concerned about starting again.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then did you go with the same business model, or had you shifted it, changed it around a bit?
Very similar. I mean, all what by the time we were doing a lot of health clubs, and so we geared up to go out. Hence the name of the business, Design for Leisure. But we went after and that's the business that we have today. Was to go after the leisure industry in particular, because that's where we'd seen the greatest opportunities.
Yeah. And how did you build differently to that first time round?
Um, same thing, different industry, really. But I kept it very small. I was scared stiff of debt.
Yeah.
And I certainly, not that the banks would have touched me, but I didn't want to touch them either, for that matter, when
Yeah.
it came to borrowing. I mean, and look, is it, the classic sort of comment about banks who hand out umbrellas when the sun is shining and then ask for them back when the rain comes. It's not somewhere you want to be. Up to your neck in debt to a bank. I promise you.
Yeah.
And so it was a much slower trajectory, as I built that business. But I mean, very much keeping a small team. That was me. I wasn't even employing the drafts people that I was using. I was subcontracting it so that it was a case of I didn't have monthly salaries around my neck. I was using freelancers and the guys I was using to build everything. I was using subcontractors and not actually employees.
Yeah.
So that was very much a case of how I changed it the second time round.
Yeah. And do you think that was a better way to grow the business, or do you think it just took the pressure off of you?
Um, well, in a way, Lewis, it was. I suppose it was the only way as well. One, I was absolutely debt averse. Secondly, not many people were going to want to lend me money anyway with that history. So it was a bit of both. Um, but looking at it now, what the company is today, we're very much an employer led business. Um, and so we've gone back to the old way of we hire people, we pay them salaries, we have got some subcontractors, to cope with the peaks and the troughs of the business. But no, we're back. We are very much the fact of everybody, and I like the way of people feeling part of the team, that they're part of the company, they've got something to be proud of, and something that that they're happy to be part of building and sharing the success of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So looking over your kind of business journey, there's been some real high points. Of course, there's been some low points as well there. What do you think has been the thing which has kept you going over the years and keeping moving the business forward?
Well, I think that it's that I thoroughly enjoy what I do. I love the industry I work in. Designing spas principally for hotels or hospitality industry, where who doesn't like going to a spa? So every single person that ever walked in any space that we've ever created is going there for pleasure and taking a pleasurable experience away with them from using those facilities. So that in itself is incredibly rewarding. But I mean, for us, the big trajectory came then. If you like, the next phase um, jumped to sort of 2003 when out of the blue, I got a phone call from a company in America who wanted to, who'd heard about us, found us through asking questions, and wanted an English speaking company because most of our competitors at the time were European. Actually, many still are, but they didn't want a company that was speaking English as a foreign language. So they looked in the UK and found me, and asked me to go and do a project in the United States in Miami, and that was the next phase. That was the next massive leap in the business because I mean then we went into the States in 2003. The two projects, in fact, that they gave us opened in 2007 and 8. By January 2007, I'd realized that the business was opportunities were enormous, and we opened an office in the States in 2007 and set up a wholly owned subsidiary in America.
Amazing. It sounds like from what you've been sharing today that you're pretty good at spotting where there's opportunity. So do you think that's just something that comes naturally? Is it something you've intentionally think about, like where are the next opportunities, or is it just it kind of is there in front of you and your brain just works that way that it can spot it and kind of goes it all in on that?
Well, I think that look at as small businesses have to be incredibly agile, and you've got to be able to respond, and you've got to be, and you've got to have a pretty active antenna. And I think my antenna was very active, and losing a business is and all consequences that go with that has an impact, and it's a lesson you'll never forget. And as such, you are always looking over your shoulder to make sure that you're doing the right thing, and is there something I'm missing, and so you're trying to look backwards and forwards at the same time. Um, but with regards to um, the sorry, somebody's speaking close to me.
That's
So I'm
fine.
okay, but before we went to the States, I'd gone back to the Middle East. Dubai, in particular, was booming. We'd started a new business there. We set up a representative agency there, at some point, I was there sort of every month. And we had some quite significant successes there, but that was that place, even going back to the 2000s, everybody from the world thought the streets were paved with gold, and they were all rushing there. But the business model there is ruthless. The margins are wafer thin. You never get your last 10% out of any single project there, and often that 10% is more than the profit you're making. So when the opportunity came in the States, and it was a case of I ran both markets for a while, but the last job we ever built was in Dubai, was in 2008, which was Atlantis on the Palm, and that was it. From there on in, we concentrate all our work in the United States,
I think that's
and
another
it's
brilliant lesson as well
like a
is,
world.
yeah, go where it is working. And actually, I think a lot of business owners, but also if I'm making this about life in general, we we keep things going in areas where it's not actually yielding us the return we want to have, and yet we keep going because that's what we've always done, or we're not paying attention to the detail of, well, is this actually working, is this not actually working? So I think that's a brilliant lesson as well. Nikki's asked a fantastic question. I love this one. Thank you for sharing your story so openly with us. We all learn from our early mistakes. As a person that spots opportunity, this is you, Don. Um, if you were starting out now, where do you think the opportunities are?
Well, I suppose as somebody who's a bit blinkered looking at his own industry, and obviously I see what's going on, within the tech world, and everything that's happening with AI, and and I self-administer my pension, and do my own investing in on a much wider scale than my own industry, albeit I do invest in my own industry as well, but um, in our particular world, social wellness is an enormous opportunity, because we're what we're seeing is that it's one, it's the people getting away from screens, and actually the whole sort of loneliness and mental wellness and mental health of young people. It's never been at such great a risk. And people are searching for experiences. The Gen Z is all about experiences, and living them, feeling them, and we're seeing that if I was going to open a business today, then it would certainly be in that sphere. And the people I'm dealing with now, who are the entrepreneurs coming into our sphere, they're people that 15 years ago, I would never, ever have come across them, because 15 years ago, if they were entrepreneurs looking to go into business, they'd have been opening bars and nightclubs. So the people that are coming into this space are still the people seeking to entertain others, but they're looking to do it through wellness and social interaction, and an entirely different way and a different scale to the whole nightclub industry. Nobody ever says where we're going to put the bar, because there isn't one. It's just, booze is no longer the driving factor. I mean, Gen Z are the first generation ever to drink less alcohol than the previous generation. Um, and that in itself is an interesting factor. But seeing the way it is going, is filling me with confidence that there's an enormous opportunity out there for people who want to invest and take a chance in entertaining others.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. Maybe we should be doing a star trading spa retreat on a regular basis, and maybe we'll do that. That'd be a good thing to do. Although I am the type of person, I don't like a spa that much. After an hour, I'm done. I'm bored. I've sat in the sauna. I've got myself wet and wrinkly, and then I'm over it. Then I want to go to the bar after that or get a nice bit of steak. So,
Yeah, but I mean, but it just, look, it doesn't have to. It doesn't. The trouble is, that's the old model, okay, where it was all about eating a lettuce leaf, and being squeaky clean and all the rest of it. But the way it's going today is different, and I'm not talking about spa. I'm talking about social wellness centers where you're going for entertainment. I mean, call them bathhouses, whatever you like, but it's somewhere where you're going with a group of friends together.
mhm.
Not that it's not this sitting there in silence, and and being afraid to even whisper to a friend or whatever. These places are different. These places are buzzing. I mean, we're working with some of the most talented people in the world when it comes to creating experiences, immersive sound and vision people. I mean, I've got a guy coming in here to talk to our whole team this afternoon. I mean, Rami Elgar, and this guy is just brilliant visionary, and creates all these wonderful visual spaces that people love to go, and it's entertainment, and it's just incredibly different to anything anyone's ever experienced. It's certainly not your sort of touchy feely pampering spa environment.
Yeah. If we're talking, it's an interesting concept, that because one thing that my brain starts to think, because I'm probably ADHD, so I get bored of the same thing repeatedly. If we're if you're curating these beautiful spaces, which are visual and auditory experiences, not just a set location,
Mhm.
how do you facilitate or build in the capacity for change within those experiences if the architecture is set? How do you allow that transition from one to another so that people don't feel like I've been there, I've done that, I can tick that off, and therefore don't use the space on an ongoing basis?
Firstly, everything is multisensory. So, but that multisensory is created by technology. But that means that you can change it. I mean, we've got an enormous screen in the office here, 120-inch screen, and that is constantly changing through. I think we've got something like 280,000 videos of different tranquil environments, whether it be rain drifting through the rainforest onto leaves or whatever it may be. Now, there's all of that information out there, and visual stimulation, but there's also artificially created visual stimulation as well. Now, whether I don't know whether you've ever been to one of these immersive art exhibitions, you go there and all the paintings of Van Gogh are distributed all around the place. Everywhere you look, the whole thing is there, and you're covered in sunflowers, and so is the floor, the ceiling, and furniture, and God knows what else. But so much can be done through technology, that the architecture itself, needs to be fluid. So don't go building things out of blockwork, or what have you. Allow things to be fluid,
Mhm.
but also you can change everything with sound and vision from being at one type of space 1 second to another type of space the next. So
Yeah,
they're permanently evolving or capable of evolving.
yeah, yeah. I like that because, well, firstly, I think evolution and change is part of what makes life interesting. So, yeah. And Nick says, wellness is required, ongoing, and we will have a requirement for it. It helps us live better. Totally true, Nikki. Very, very true. So, dropping back into kind of business world and everything now. So, you've launched into the US, things are starting to grow there. You're kind of focusing a lot of your effort and energy there. What are some of the cool clients you can tell us about that you've ended up doing work for?
Um, did you say core or cool?
Cool, interesting. It's like big names, maybe,
Right.
in a better way.
Oh God. Okay. Well, we we got NDAs up to here with those clients. Um, that's one of the biggest sort of issues that you have when you work in that world, and we do work in that world, and we create some amazing spaces for private homes, better than some hotel spas. Um, but we're not really allowed to actually sort of give you names. I mean, one big name, love him or hate him, but he's been an incredibly good customer for us, is Roman Abramovich.
Mhm.
Um, and with with his Russian roots, I mean, spa and wellness and sauna is a huge part of his life. And the interesting thing about him is, as a lifelong teetotaler, outside every one of his saunas and every one of his homes, you'll find a case of beer. And he loves putting beer on his sauna heater because he loves the smell of the evaporating beer
Interesting.
pervading throughout his sauna. So a drop will never pass his lips, but he'll chuck gallons of it on his sauna heater.
So I feel like
Um,
that would just remind
but
me
I
of
mean,
a
yeah,
sweaty club where I just wouldn't want to, as opposed to it being a nice smell.
yeah, I know. Well, yeah, maybe when you're that famous, you see, you just can't go to a sweaty club because
That's true.
it's so. Perhaps you have to do it at home.
Yeah.
We did a reclusive millionaire's home in Mexico City, because he couldn't go out. He could not go anywhere in public. I mean, we were transported there, transferred from two vehicles. The first one was bulletproof. The second one was bomb-proof. We arrived at the house with pump action shotguns and God knows what else, and checking it out. We weren't allowed out of the car until these massive steel doors had closed across the garage. And then we had our passports taken whilst we were in the house, and all we were doing was talking to the guy about his spa. Um,
Wow.
but he explained to us that this level of security was essential, and his cousin had been kidnapped only 3 weeks before.
Wow.
And the reason he was going this massive expense of creating a spa in his home was because he could not go out to an everyday spa because the risk of being snatched was too great.
Yeah. That does not sound like a
But,
fun way to live at all.
and no, no, it isn't. But I suppose if if you got to live that way, then at least you have all the luxuries that the outside world can offer.
Yeah.
Um, But I mean, the GoPro camera guy there, I can't remember his name, the guy who started GoPro cameras. I mean, he's got this amazing house up on the top of a mountain in Big Sky, Montana. And one entire wall of his sauna is just glass, and just looking out over the mountains.
Yeah.
Um, and super yachts, and yeah, you name it, we've done it. But it's yeah, but I mean, we do all the Disney cruise ships as well. There's a bit of fun about it. And
Yeah.
you you I probably never worked with a more professional outfit than Disney.
Yeah.
And we've done 5 ships for them now, but it's exciting. It's great fun.
Very exciting. What would you say over the years is kinda would be, and I'm putting you on the spot here, kinda your top 3 business tips that you would share with people?
Oh, well, I think that first of all is, but I think I've said it a couple of times already. Is never ever put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
Make sure that you've got a diversification of clients from a number of walks of life. So if one of those is going to go bust, then it won't bring the entire house of cards down on top of you. And that's probably the biggest lesson to learn. And the other thing is, I mean, we the only money we have ever borrowed since 1991 was to buy a building in Texas. And that's effectively a mortgage, secured against the property. So, the risk is not there. If we can't pay the mortgage, we sell the building. But so yeah, we've never borrowed any money off the bank ever since 1991. And people think, how the hell can you? Well, you can actually. You just got to watch everything very carefully, and grow the business as your income dictates.
Awesome. Yeah.
And the other, yeah, and the other side of it is, don't be afraid to make a bloody profit.
Unpack
It's
that
the
one for me.
lifeblood of any business. It
Yeah, unpack that.
It's the lifeblood of any business, and you've got to make a decent profit.
Yeah.
And your business has to be able to pay you as the business owner a proper amount of money, because
Yeah.
there's no point in you always being the last one to get paid and all the rest. Oh well, I didn't pay myself this month or whatever it is. It's unsustainable. Okay, that means your business model is flawed. Okay, it it's got to pay the bills. It's got and to pay the bills, you got to make the right profit. And if that profit means that you mark everything up by 2.5 times, that's exactly what you got to. And if that means, if people won't buy off you at that price, then you've got to turn around and say, well, am I in the right business?
Yeah.
You know? Or you've got to look at how you can add value to that doesn't necessarily cost you money, but maybe do the job better, or present yourself better, or you know do your marketing a bit better, pricing yourself. I mean, I've always sold, even when I was selling industrial racking and storage equipment, I've always sold the most expensive products in the market.
Yeah.
And that's another one, go go for quality, go for class, go for the best product in the market, because pile it high and sell it cheap. You do an awful lot of work for a small
Yeah.
return.
Yeah. I absolutely love those, Don, and I think the first one, um, about don't put all your eggs in one basket. I mean, if we shift it out of business and into personal for 2 seconds, it's relying on just one income stream is also not a good way to go, because you never know what's gonna happen. You really don't. Um, And that one about paying yourself first in the business, I think, is a lesson I wouldn't say learned the hard way, but Star Trading has no debt. We don't owe anybody anything, and I love that as well. It means when we have the money, we spend the money on the things we want to spend it on. What I did, I think, for the first 5 years of Star Trading is I didn't really pay myself, partly because I had my own trading income, I had property portfolio income, all of those things, so I didn't need to, which allowed me to grow the business, um, quicker than maybe we would have done. But it's in the past year I have started paying myself, and it creates for me, I've noticed a better energy in the business because there's a reward for the hard work. And I also really love the way that you've talked about it there, because y- talking about, well, if you need to increase your prices or do this or do that to be able to pay yourself first, if you aren't able to do that and the business still survive, then the business isn't working the way that it should.
Mm.
Which means, and this is the bit I love, is because you made it all about self responsibility. You didn't blame anything. You said it means you need to change this. You need to look at your messaging. You need to look at your marketing. You need to look at the way you're delivering it. All of those kinds of things. And I love that because that brings it back to personal responsibility, which I'm a big fan of. And I think that's a theme through your life. You said you wanted to be the one in charge of your own
Mhm.
destiny. You wanted to be able to work hard and get the rewards for it, which on the flip side of that coin has the understanding if you don't work hard or do the right work, you won't get the rewards, which I think is very much in alignment with who we are at Star Trading as well. I think one of the things through talking to you here that is not challenging, but helping shape what I'm trying to talk about more in general is, and I don't have the right words for this. I'm going to say the words I do have right now, but don't people listening don't get offended at me. I'm trying to figure out the right wording for it. But is that wealth creation to me, having more money gives you a better life and allows you to be a better version of yourself because it takes out financial stress and financial pressure. So when we don't have that financial stress and financial pressure, because we are paying ourselves what we should be getting paid, that allows us to show up in the world in a better way. It doesn't make you a better person. I don't think having more money makes you a better human being than somebody who doesn't. But I think it allows you to show up as the best version of yourself. Not fully figured out my language around it just yet, but it all starts with taking responsibility for yourself and for your future as well. So I think that's a really, really strong theme I've noticed in the things you shared.
Well, yes, it is. And look, there is nothing worse than spending your day working, working, and working, and working hard as you possibly can, and then finding yourself going home, um, and explaining why you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't afford this, or you can't afford that, and that's just no way to live.
Yeah.
Because you can't have the stress of running a business only to go home and have a whole load of stress, you know, pressures from the family, because technically your business isn't providing what what you need it to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not talking about extravagance. I'm not talking about, flash cars and all the rest of it. I mean, yeah, I've done the flash cars. I mean, the 911 went off on the back of a low loader when the business went up, but um, but the fact is that it's, it's about, working hard and then being able to go home and not think about it, and put it behind you. Whereas, and that's where it's important to get it right, get that model right, because it rewards you in more ways than just pure financial.
Yeah. Yeah. Completely. Completely. I've just asked anybody if they've got any final questions for you, because I know you are marginally jet lagged-ish tired because you've just come back from Dubai and you're off away again fairly soon. And so it's been very, very much an honor to have you come and speak with my lovely lot. So if anybody does have any questions, I think you've given us a very strong kind of overview there and an inspiring story as well. Um, because I'm always inspired by people who choose to step away from something which is fairly safe and secure and into kind of the unknown. And that's what it sounds like you've done at multiple points throughout your journey, to then create the reality that you now have. One question I did have actually, which I haven't asked, is do you think and I kind of haven't answered this because I know some of what you got up to at college with my dad. Don't worry, it's not a scary question. But do you think you've always been entrepreneurial? Do you think you've always had that kind of in you to see opportunity and make the most of it, shall we say?
Yeah, I think yes, I have. I mean, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My father, his father before him. I mean, the butchery businesses were their background, but always entrepreneurs and business owners as opposed to working in the industry. Um, uh, Yes, I was, as I said earlier on, I was never afraid of working. I mean, from collecting Coke bottles on the beach to get the 3 old pence deposit back,
Yeah.
because the trippers were too damn lazy to take them back to themselves. Um, but yes, and I'm going back to college when the third um, bar manager of our students' union bar, which was actually a private social club, the way it was structured, got carried out in an alcoholic coma. Myself and a couple of other students got together and we actually took control of the whole thing. And we actually did a far better job of running our bar than people who were meant to be professional, bar managers that we'd been paying salaries to and been stealing, drinking, God knows what else. And I nearly then got chucked out of college because I was spending so much time running the bar that I wasn't doing any of my coursework. Um, so so yes, perhaps I should have taken the hint then that my heart lay in the entrepreneurial world, not in the educational one.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Don, for joining us.
Yeah.
And thank you, everybody else who has joined us as well today. And I will speak to you all very, very soon. Bye bye, everyone.
Thanks, Lewis. Thank you. Bye bye. Bye.